the reason it came was whenever we do interfaith or saviorism or however you want to call it, we always find there's so much in common, whether it be Lent, and Ramadan, whether it be the awaiting someone, and one of the things that really strikes me, at least in this day of age, and we touched upon this, was the growing sense of immorality and people following and being in the pursuit of desires, and the other end being ubudiyya, what we would call obedience, and going with God's decree and God's decree of work. So my question, at least, is what, to the panel, whoever can start, is what do you consider is one or maybe few of the greatest challenges that we're facing as a faith community now? I have some ideas, but I don't want to start. But there are many things which, as a collective faith community, whether it be a community in UK or London, as we have someone hostage here today from London, or whether it's in Manchester, what would be, as to the panel, the greatest challenges for us? Would like to speak? Bismillah. Bismillah.
Testing 1, 2. Is it on?
It's on.
Yeah. Okay. I was hoping other people would talk first, so I'd get a chance to think. I think there are a number of great challenges we have to face. To start with the things that are closer to us, I think one big challenge is the fact that with the abandonment of God, with the abandonment of the transcendent and immanent center, what we are left with is Promethean man, is human beings as a center of all reality. And this has degenerated to what we would call identity politics in our society today, where everyone who claims to, and at this time, a sexual identity, okay, but I don't think that it will remain there. For example, we have the phenomenon of Rachel Dolezal, for example, who, if you might know it, a white woman who passed as black and worked with the NAACP in America, which is very effective, but she also said that she identifies with being black, so she is black. See, so if I identify as trans, or if I identify as whatever, I am that, and I insist upon my rights to be accrued to me because I am that. And it can get pretty dangerous because there are people, for example, who identify with being, for example, paralyzed or missing a limb, and there are cases where somebody amputated themselves in order to fulfill that type of thing. And I think this is the level of ridiculosity, if that is a word. I'm inventing words today. Ridiculousness that is happening. It's degenerating all the time, and these identity politics are becoming universalized. And you're calling for rights all over the world and in every society and in your school and so forth and so on, to identify with those rights and those identities that are unstable. They're unstable. They won't remain that way, the way they are. You see, I think it's the biggest threat to us right now. I think other threats are the fact that, for example, we have a system, an educational system, that does not include the divine. You see, and the divine now, to believe in God, seems to be something to be embarrassed about. It's not intellectual to believe in God, for example. And people sometimes find a reason to hate you when you believe in God because you're backward. So I think these are very important things. I think we need to be able to get our youth confident, which includes a discourse or a discussion about all of these false gods that we have in the world today, right? The biggest false god being ourselves, okay, or the identity that we want to get our hands on, you know, and to teach our children to be able to debate and to engage these people, for them to know that this religion or these religions that we have are not mere mindless dreamings, but very, you know, systematic and organized ways of thinking that can be defended.
It's my turn. There are many things one can choose from, I suppose. I think I want to focus on one that I spend a lot of my time thinking about and working on. And I think it is the challenge within our communities to work together as communities with regard to extremism and radicalization. The answers are within the communities rather than from someone else, and that has to be seen begin locally very much. But so I tend to look at some external challenges with less fear, perhaps, than I should. I'm somewhat of an optimist about what God is able to do in the world, and that we are in times. I know that the Christianity in the West is often viewed as being on its last legs and struggling to exist, but I see it rather as we do know those who are willing to identify as Christian, in the positive sense, if you allow me, openly to our it means something rather than a cultural standard that someone grows up with. So in that respect, it's a more of a strength that we may have for those who have a faith which means something for everyday life, to be able to work together, and that we work as I was suggesting in what I was saying about God's purposes for all of creation is that a humanity that lives out the purposes of God for peace, for shalom. But we face this immediate challenge, as of course you will be very much aware, and feel very much as a minority community here, in which Islam is always portrayed as terrorists. That the response has to be in which we can have a society where people don't feel they need to act in that sort of way.
Thank you. I've been working with the Pakistani communities for the last 15, 16 years. And one of my aim was to bring these communities together. I think there's an ignorance of each other's religion and each other's culture. They will scared when somebody they see with this hijab, scarf. They will see somebody with a beard, they run away. But if they meet and greet that person behind the hijab, they'll see a beautiful person behind the hijab. They go for the appearance. When I took over in Gorton, the local community, the rumor spread in Gorton, has he come to turn this church into the mosque? They went with the appearance. They saw me as a Pakistani Christian. They didn't see I'm a priest. But they saw my appearance and they presume that I might be turning this church into the mosque. The first thing I did, I put the notice board, a big notice board, put my name clearly there. That I have not come here to turn this church into the mosque, but I have come to serve in this church. We need to know the local community here and we all as a human, under the skin, we are all the same. That's the first thing, is English or Asian, they all need to know whether they belong to any religion. First of all, we are human. We need to create friendship first. If we come close to one another, then we'll get to know better. Last Lent season, when Ramadan was, I invited all my Muslim friends. They came as family. And I offered them to break their fast in the church. And I told them that Prophet Muhammad, he prayed in the church when they seek asylum in Najran, isn't it? When the king Najash, he offered his church. And I said, you can have the experience. If your prophet can say their prayer in the mosque, why can't you do? All the men went in the church. They said their prayer there. All the women went in upper room and they prayed over there. And we broke the fast together. So that sort of community events need to be happening. And that will bring us all together. The fear will go and we'll create more friendship. And as I had my great interest studying Islam, that brought me close to Islam. I'm 50 plus, but I'm not converted. But I got a great respect about Islam, about Muslims, because I still got many friends who are Muslims. They are beautiful people. You are beautiful people. Why we're not here to scare one another? Yes? Yeah. So that's the message we need to send it to the community in Manchester. So I think if we could do something in Manchester, we can do anywhere in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'd like to open to the floor. So we've got, is there anyone? I'll start with the sisters first, because they always say, oh, we've been left behind. So is there anyone from the sisters who would like to pose a question? Yes, there's also, if someone wants to write down, there's the paper and pen that's been passed around.
Yeah, I'm just interested about, sorry, what's your name, the second guy?
Me?
No, yeah.
Doctor.
Yeah, yeah, what's your name? Sorry, I'm very bad with names. Dr.
Dwight.
Dr. Wright. Yeah, I'm just interested about, you know how you said towards the, about the change in creation and what it says in the Bible about change. I just wanted to understand that, because I didn't quite catch, I didn't quite understand that concept when you talked about change in creation, what it says in the Bible about change in the creation.
Right.
So if you can just clarify that.
I'll try as briefly as I can. Right. Yeah, there is the picture which we have at the end of the book of Revelation, after the violence of the that's described of the last days, is that the final redemption is a redemption of all of creation, not just humanity, but all of creation, and that and then the picture that there is in the book of the letter of Paul to the Romans talks about how all of creation is groaning, waiting the redemption of humanity, because we are basically messing it up. So even creation is awaiting this, and that is part of God's redemption, is the righting of all of creation. So the picture is of a new heaven, a new earth coming out of heaven, and so in some way in which it refreshes, renews, restores everything. So rather than going somewhere to heaven, heaven itself is on earth. The picture comes from the book of Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah in the Old Testament, which describes the wolf lying with the lamb and a child playing with the lion, in which all of creation is at peace with itself. And so that's the goal, that's the purpose of redemption. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm just trying to relate it to to the idea of the Saviour. If the creation is going to change, and I didn't, because you know how you showed us the script, I didn't find anywhere where it actually talks about the ideology of the Saviour. I felt like it was Jesus coming to actually take humanity where they change, where, you know, it's like change in creation occurs, and it just sounds to me like it's the day of judgment, or it sounds like there's just going to be that change and then everybody will live happily ever after, or I don't understand. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that I chose one text rather than trying to give all the possibilities of that, and so it's
so it's just when the
that
Messiah
these things
comes,
are happening at that time. Yes, and
what
so
happens when the Messiah comes?
yeah, so it's not only the end of history, but it's the goal of history, which is redemption of all of creation. So salvation of all of creation, if you will. So that's the end result. So the salvation through Jesus as Savior is God's way of dealing with all of creation in that way.
Okay.
It requires that picture language in a way, because it has both the book of Revelation and Isaiah have this picture of that, but it's the sense that God does not just intend to patch things up, but that His purpose all is, and that all of creation will be at peace with each other and with Him, and this is the goal.
Okay. Yeah.
I think one way of probably trying to understand that, sister, is that the last days, the day of judgment, has a number of signs. Okay? One of the signs of the day of judgment, or the coming of the day of judgment, much more accurately, is the return of Prophet Jesus, okay? And also, from our point of view, the Imam al-Mahdi, okay? This is a sign that leads up to the day of judgment. The time between that and the day of judgment could be anybody's guess, but what we do know is that between that time, a decline would also set into place. All right? A decline would also set into place. So after the Imam and Prophet Jesus come and they defeat the Antichrist, there comes into existence a period of peace and well-being and so forth. All right? But you still have Christians, you still have Jews, you still have other people, but it's under a more comprehensive, integral system. Yeah? But we know Imam is going to die a shaheed. That means there's got to be forces that are anti-him. Why? Because that situation is not heaven. Okay? What the Imam establishes, what the Hazrat Isa establishes, is not heaven. Heaven is something that comes after the day of judgment. The day of judgment comes when the whole world is full of oppression and injustice. You know, they say, for example, in the hadith by the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, that people would pass Mecca and Medina, and people would say a great civilization once arose here. It would become a time where people, for example, the Quran itself wouldn't have any writing in it because people have forgotten the Quran and so forth. This is after the Imam. Okay? And the day of judgment comes. And the day of judgment, just to sort of add to what the doctor said, the day of judgment is a sudden evolution of the entire cosmos. And so the earth becomes a higher earth. It's still earth, you see, but it becomes a higher level of earth. The human body is a higher level of a human body. In the words of the Buddhists, it would be called, they call it the diamond body, you see, a higher kind of a body. You know, more superior people. The angels will be more superior. You know, the angels, when they come back after the second blowing, and you know the first blowing, everything dies. Everything dies, including Jesus. Well, I don't know about Jesus. I don't know the Holy Prophet, because there are some people who will not die, right? But everybody dies. And then when they come back, they all come back with a new form, you know, in a new relationship. A heaven that is wider than all the earth that is wider than the heavens and the earth, for example, and so on. And people will be able to contact with the angels and so forth because they will have a higher level of perception. So in a kind of a timeline type of a thing, you know, the coming of Prophet Jesus and the Imam, you know, are signs, one of the signs that lead up to the day of judgment.
Anyone from the brothers? Yes, we've got one question to start. Brother Abu Layla.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
So nice to see this differentiation between, belief but the same religious. Islam is the religion for everybody. And the core of Islam from the same source through the many prophet and messenger. The problem with the holy book is the same. So when the human translate the book, so they affected by their culture, moral background. So, but that's one problem. The second problem is depend on the people. So, people worship in a human, not the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So from then, that's where you see differences. So the question is, how do we find the real religious while you have the holy book and you need to go deep in your book, whatever book, Bible or Quran, you need to find out the real religion. So people follow we need to have the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the religions of people. Thank you very much. How do you prove that? Are you with me? Or
So is the if I'm
so go deep in your book, because your job, ulama job now, go deep in your book and find out the real Allah, the real message, the real deen.
The question is, how do you find the real
Deen from your whole
God
Bollywood
through
book.
scripture?
Yes,
Yes.
that's the
Okay,
question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We humans sometimes forget the importance. As my sister asked the question about the new creation, we need to know when God created Adam, He gave him everything. God created the best for Adam. And what he did? He disobeyed God. God said, you can eat, you can enjoy everything. You are not allowed to eat the fruit of this particular tree. And then the serpent came, the Satan came and encouraged Adam. God is asking you not to become God. That's why God is stopping you to eat this. And he listened, his wife listened to serpent and then picked the apple, ate, and then offered it to Adam. The sin took place. And this immorality grew in this world. People were more talking about their own flesh. But we talk about Jesus as a new Adam. Jesus came, God could bring Jesus in any other form. But God chose that Jesus should come as a human. He could create Jesus from the stones because he's able to. He can just say and it happens. But he wanted to send Jesus to be a role model. First Adam brought this sin and destruction. The second Adam came and lived among us as human and lead us toward the divinity. Because he was blameless, he was sinless, nobody could ever find any sin in Jesus. And he directed people towards divinity. This body is going to go in the dust. We are dust, and into dust we are going to return. What's going to be in heaven is our spirit. If all of us know that God lives in our spirit, we are all made in the image of God. and God's image is engraved in our spirit, not in our body. We are all different, but in spirit, God's image is there. If we get to know that God lives in our spirit, and end of the day when we die, it's not the body who is going to swift to heaven and see God. God is life, God is light. And our spirit is going to see God face to face. We will not be in the same body. We will be in the liquid body. We can cross through the walls, through the mountains, because we will be in the spiritual bodies. But our appearance might be the same. But they will not be in a physical, dusty body. So that's where we want to see God face to face. That's what our Christian belief is. Our Jannat, our Bahisht, is seeing God face to face. But for that, Jesus said, blessed are those who are pure in heart. They will see God. There's come the purity of heart and purity of soul. And then I think once we understand all the religions, understand the purity of soul, and concentrate on the betterment of soul, then we can be real Muslim, real Christian. We will be the people of God, no matter which religion we belong to. End of the day, Jesus is going to come and do the imamat, isn't it?
Yes.
And is this. Whatever route we are saying, he is going to come, he is doing the imamat.
I was going to make an answer to this. We're fighting up here for the microphone.
I'm saving all of mine today.
Your question is basically the way I understand it is how do we find the real God or the real religion through our religion and so forth and so on,
We need
right?
real Islam.
I'm not talking about real Islam. Let's say real truth.
Real Islam.
Let's say real truth. We are at an interfaith gathering. We're not talking about the real Islam here. We're talking about truth. Okay, spiritual truth.
Yeah. No, it's not.
Okay, let's not argue now here. I got the mic. All right. Now, I think there are two major ways. Okay? Two major ways. I think, first of all, we begin from where we are. We begin with our own religion. Okay? And I think the first and most important thing to find or to do in terms of trying to find the truth in our religion is to go to God and ask God and pray to God for wisdom and for guidance and with all honesty, with all humility, and with all confidence in his answer, and you will get your answer. Okay? The second thing is when we also, in the context of a multitude of other religions, and we want to embark upon a more scholarly aspect of theological inquiry, then we use things like our reason to be able to understand certain things. Okay? And I think our approach should be one of rapprochement, not one of opposition. Okay? Because our religion is one that is inclusive. It is not exclusivist. All right? You know, everybody worships God in some way. You know, it's just that some people don't know that they're worshiping God, but they are. But I think these two things are extremely important. The first one, much more so than anything else. And I think with that, you could be guided to the right religion, or you could be guided to the right in your religion. You see, because I think religion, I know, why did God allow, for example, Christianity to continue to exist, and Judaism to continue to exist, and Buddhism to continue to exist? And why do these religions have barakah, have grace, have salvation in them? There's no doubt about it that they do. You know, I had a grandmother who was a Christian. All right, this woman was extremely powerful in her love for Jesus. And I used to see it as a grandson looking at her. You know, this woman was so powerful after she died, she came back to see me. I don't mean in a dream. I mean in reality. You know, while I was awake. And we know in Islam it takes a special status with God for you to be able to do that. You see, so religion is something like God has provided out of his mercy, that religion could conform to other people's different needs. You see, there's some people who need law. There's some people who need love. You understand? You know, there's some people who need contemplation. All right? There's some people who might combine all of them. So we have to know our own pattern, and we have to be honest with God and to take his guidance, and I'm sure we would not be disappointed.
Sheikh Abbas.
There were a couple of points mentioned. And so there's no misunderstanding for what the Shia school of thought's point of view is on the things that we've discussed. When it comes to understanding the Holy Quran and the Holy Text, it's not just the Muslims, but I'm sure Christians, Jews, Hindus also have this predicament where they are trying to understand the text as humans, but the text is divine. And now, according to the Muslims, there's a difference between the Holy Quran and the Bible. As Muslims, we believe that the Bible was not a miracle of Prophet Jesus. However, the Quran is the living miracle of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. First point. Second point is that in books, for example, from our early scholars, for example, Sheikh Kulaini in his Kafi, whether it be Sheikh Saduq in Malla Yahdul al-Faqih, to our contemporary scholars, for example, Sheikh Abbas Qummi, and also in the books of Ahl Sunnah like Bukhari, in the chapter of Bab al-Nuzul al-Anbiya, the descension of the prophets, in the Bab al-Nuzul of Isa, when it comes to the chapter of when Prophet Jesus will come down from the heavens, because the topic of Imamah was discussed. The riwayah in Bukhari says that فَيَشِيرُ الْمَهْدِي إِلَىٰ عِيسَى لِتَقَدُّمِهِ فِي الصَّلَاةِ. Mahdi, peace and blessings be upon him, the 12th Imam, he will indicate to Jesus to lead the prayer. فَيَمْتَنِعْ. And he will refrain and say that how can I pray when someone like you, who is the son of Zahra, present? So this is our belief that the Imam of the time will lead the prayer and behind him will be Prophet Jesus. Now, people ask what is the reason for this? There's two reasons. One of the reasons being that there's some Muslims that claim that, for example, Imam Ali prayed behind so-and-so. Imam Ali prayed behind so-and-so. So we answered them by Bukhari saying that when the 12th Imam is not praying behind an infallible prophet like Jesus, how do you expect our first Imam to pray behind someone that was, selling stuff in the days of ignorance? So these are the views of the Shia. Also, if I can remember, which I can't, there was another point as well. I had 3 points that I wanted to, if it comes to my mind, I will mention. But these were 2 points that were mentioned that I just wanted to mention the Shia school of thought's point of view when it comes to these instances. Thank you.
First of all, it's absolutely amazing that we're having this conversation. I've never been in a panel like this, having this conversation about the future, about hope, and about those people who we are looking towards in order for them to come and bring this perfect world order. And alhamdulillah, I think just by talking about it, the hearts light up, the faces light up, and there's a positive vibe in the room. And I think it's very important that we have, because we're inundated with negativity so much, that we need this positivity. But my question to you is, are we in a place where we are being bombarded with knowledge and our spirituality is being affected? Or do we need more spirituality within our communities, more of a spiritual connection? Or is the knowledge enough? And if so, how do we bring about that spiritual connection, first of all, amongst the community, and bring the community together, and then secondly, towards God? Because we live in a time where we don't have time, we're in this rat race, and we tend to forget that we do have this important side of our being, is the spiritual connection. So in your view, do we need to work on that? And if so, how do we go forward about doing that without seeming that we are forcing it upon people or our children or the youth?
Okay. No, I didn't grab it. Just passing it. What struck me in the question is about this opposition between knowledge and spirituality. And I think this in a nutshell really describes the kind of dilemma that we face today. That knowledge is one thing, spirituality is some kind of non-knowledge. All right? But I think it was you who mentioned that our purpose in this world is to get to know God and love Him. That's our purpose. To get to know God and love him. That knowing God, this is knowledge. This is knowledge. You see, we have to try as much as possible to get to a personal knowledge of God. I always like to say that religion is empirical. Not empirical in terms of, for example, you need to take a sample of something and put it in a test tube to test it to see if it's real. No, it's empirical as my relationship is here with you right now. We are in each other's presence. We know each other exists from our senses, our eyes, our hearing. Everything tells me that you exist. This is empirical. I don't need to prove you in a chemistry lab. And this is the kind of encounter with God that we are talking about, a real personal encounter with God. When you have that knowledge of God, then you do not need, or you don't have to be challenged by the other secular or profane types of knowledge that are out there. You see? And so I think that, first of all, we as adults or parents and so forth need to strive towards getting to know God. You know, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the prayer is the mi'raj of the mu'min. Prayer is the upward ascent, the heavenly ascent of the believer. This literally means this, that each prayer we do is a step towards closer to heaven, the heavenly areas. You know, each prayer that we take gives us a greater opportunity to, like the Holy Prophet in his mi'raj, to see that which we believe in. To see that which we believe in. Many of the Urafah, the mystics of Islam, say that our practice is to see the reality. In other words, to see the barzakh, the purgatory, where the souls go. To see the hellfire. To see the heaven. To see the angels. This is our task. This is why we are called human beings. And the prayer is supposed to take us to this. If we know this prayer is to be this vehicle, to be this burak that will take us to Allah, how then will we treat our prayers from now? Okay? Right now we treat our prayers like, for example, let's say our prayers like a car outside. You just run inside there, turn on the ignition, step on the gas, close your eyes, and just travel. That's how we treat our prayers. But if you know that this thing can take you to a particular exalted goal, then you're going to take this very, very, very seriously. So I think the most important thing is to separate this idea that there's knowledge, there's valid knowledge, for example, and that knowledge is physical and empirical, and then there's spirituality, which is some kind of airy-fairy thing, you know, that is common between witches and bishops and imams. You know what I'm saying? Some kind of airy-fairy something like that. No. Religion is a knowledge. It's a particular knowledge, and we have to imbue our children with that.
I think if I understood the question, or the way in which I understood the question with regard to so much knowledge, we're in a world of knowledge explosion where there's so much available, and all we have to do is go online and be bombarded. That absolutely, yes, we do need to turn it off at times, and that's what prayer is about, and silence. I was thinking about this not too long ago, how wherever I go, people have got noise going on all the time, and so there's no time where there's just nothing but you and then God has a chance to talk to you, and we're afraid of that. So yeah, absolutely, and that's what our faith says that there are means by which we draw near to God through prayer. In worship is a place in which this takes place in the community. It's not just about myself, but us together. And for us, it is. In terms of knowledge as being able to know what your beliefs are, what to believe and what not to believe, what's true news and what's false news, we do need to work at that sort of thing. But the knowledge which feeds the heart and the spirit is through that kind of meditation. So we are encouraged as Christians to meditate on Jesus' life and sayings and actions to be like him. And it's only in the first place in understanding what he's like and listening to his voice that then we may act in that sort of way. And if you know, again, if all Christians would actually do that, we might have less problems in our world as we are. So yeah, you have to have some silence somewhere.
I think most of you know Urdu, yes? पढ़ पढ़ के कुछ पत्थर बन गए, लिख लिख के कुछ चोर. पढ़ पढ़ के कुछ पत्थर बन गए ते लिख लिख के कुछ चोर, जिसदे पढ़िया रब मिलदा है ओ पढ़िया कुछ होर. Translation is, there are many people who write and become stone, and those who read and read, they become stone, and those who write and write become thief. But the good thing is, those who read about God, they will get to know God. In order to spiritual thing, knowledge is one side, is very, very important. But main thing is to grow in spirituality. There are three things: prayer, meditation, and contemplation. These are the three things which could lead you towards God. Okay? Only simple things: prayer, meditation, and contemplation. If you just follow these three steps, you will get to know God. Okay? You will reach near God. You will get the enlightenment from God. The other thing is whether it is good thing to share the knowledge or the spirituality. We have started challenging hate crime, and that is based in Manchester Cathedral. Few years ago, we started this group. We invited all the people, all the leaders from all the communities, and we do different activities over the year. Even on 4th of February at 2 o'clock, different things are happening in Manchester Cathedral, and if you are interested, you can go and put your own stall there. There are Ahmadis, Wahhabis, and all sort of people are in part of that challenging hate group. And we do lots of things, peace and unity in different places. We did in cathedral, we did in synagogue, we did in mosque as well. And this is bringing people the awareness, what we are all about. And you can learn about theology, you can learn about spirituality, you can learn about different faiths and different communities. So that's those sort of things we need to do, I think, to pass our values to our next generation, which are very, very important.
Before I answer or comment on what the sister mentioned, the third point came to my mind. The third point was that we were discussing previously before that the position of the prophets in the Shia school of thought is that they are infallible. And according to the Shias, when Prophet Adam was in that garden, it wasn't a serpent. According to, obviously, I have the duty that I've done myself with these clothes to give the view of the Shia school of thought. So that's all I'm doing. Is that according to us, the prophets are infallible. They do not commit sins. Therefore, it was not a sin that was committed by Nabi Adam. More, it was something that we refer to as tarki awla. Tarki awla refers to when something is better and it is not done. It's not a sin. And secondly, again, the tafasir, the commentaries of the Quran discuss this in more detail. When it comes to, for example, a serpent coming into heaven. According to the Muslims, heaven is a place where nothing bad can take place. So shaitan, Satan, the devil cannot come into heaven according to our beliefs. Coming back to what the sister was mentioning, I think that spirituality and knowledge, they go hand in hand. What spirituality is there without knowledge, and what knowledge is there without spirituality? And we find that it's been mentioned as well previously by our guests and the Sheikh, that unfortunately, especially Islam, that it has this label attached to it. That Muslims, that they look a certain way, they dress a certain way, and they are labeled. If you look on social media, if you look on the internet, if you type in, for example, Shia Islam, even us as Shia, we get scared at the images that we see. And we know that this is not a true representation of what we believe in. And therefore, we should not also get onto this carousel and say, for example, the Christians are like this. And I'm glad, and I would like to, praise the organizers of such events, where we can understand what the true message of a particular religion is, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam. Because it's unfortunate that the world looks at the Muslims and not Islam. The world pays too much attention on Muslims that look like someone out of, as someone said, the film Pirates of the Caribbean. However, the other Muslims that are normal, no one is, even looking at them. They have no interviews, they have no social media coverage. However, alhamdulillah, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is changing. And it's certain events like this that we have where it sometimes surprises us as well that there's brothers and sisters from other schools of thought or even different religions. They do not know what for example, Shias believe in. They don't know our view about God. Can we see him? Can we not? When it comes to, for example, the Prophet, when it comes to the Imams, when it comes to our leaders, when it comes to our, for example, jurisprudence, when it comes to our history, when it comes to our traditions, because it's not discussed in circumstances like this, what happens is people start going to the internet. I was mentioning to other brothers before as well that even me as someone that's studied in the Hawza for, again, a limited amount of time, when we see some of the stuff that's on the internet, it surprises us. That I didn't know the Shias believe that, because we don't, it's not true. And again, it's when we have these interfaith dialogues and discussions, can we bounce off each other, as they say? Can we see the commonalities and similarities? Can we see the differences? Because in those places that there are commonalities, we also have our differences. But we agree to disagree. And as I was mentioning in the talk, when my time finished, is that the prayer that Abu Haritha, the spiritual leader, that he did was that do not curse upon these Muslims. For فَلَا يَبْقَى عَلَى وَجْهِ الْأَرْضِ نَصْرَانِيًّا. Because if we curse upon these individuals, then there will not be a Christian left on earth. So therefore, it's the mercy, as it was mentioned before as well, that the fact that we have different religions, this is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's His grace that shows us that, look, there's different ways of interpreting. However, every religion at the end of the day say, no, we're right. So they were the two things that I wanted to mention.
Thank you. So I think we'll have two more questions. One from Sister Ghazala, who's been waiting for a while. So you can, Sister Ghazala at the back.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is this. It's been really helpful to hear the theological discussions, and I suppose some of our responsibility is also to think about how we take some of the learning, particularly around the commonalities and the shared themes that we have, around taking them to our communities as well. So it's great to have theological discussions, but also how we countering some of the negative narrative that there is. We've talked about the media and the constant influence of social media and various other channels and how that's infiltrating young people, and we've talked about some of the greatest challenges that we're experiencing, and there's many, but particularly through the curriculum at the moment with our young children, there's all kinds of themes that are being pushed by all kinds of different agendas. So I suppose my question is, how do you, through your respective roles and organisations, influence some of that, but also how do we do that collectively as religions, if you like, and come together to think about how together we're stronger, but also how together we influence some of those narratives so that they serve some of the practices and beliefs of our communities as well?
Sisters mentioned some very important points. What's important is that we understand our responsibility. Everyone has a responsibility. For example, I always give this example that when I was in Iran, I received a phone call saying that in one of the centers, there's no one to teach the Holy Quran. Kids want to have classes, however, there's no literature for us to teach. It was in that year that I wrote my first book on Tajweed. Seeing what the conditions and the environment of the time are, everyone's responsibilities change. there's responsibilities of parents on children. Now, there's certain topics that are flying around at the moment, and again, there's certain ways of discussing this. When we look into historical accounts, when we look into the books of Rijal, we find that the Prophet and the Imams, they had certain companions that they would discuss certain sciences with, and others that they would not discuss those sciences. Meaning what? That there's certain subjects that need to be discussed so that the parents are informed, so that they can go and pass that message on to their children. There's certain discussions, no, you can do it on live TV, you can do it so it's broadcasted. This is a problem that we're facing, that people are not recognizing their responsibility. And why is that? It's because of ignorance. They are not educated. People are willing to get married, however, they don't know the huquq and rights of a husband, and the husband doesn't know the rights of his wife. So tomorrow when someone like me turns around and says that, no, she doesn't have to do that, they go against us. Why? It's because they're entering all these paths of life with ignorance. So for example, there's a sister, she has a responsibility. There's a brother, they have a responsibility. And you can't expect people to, drag your load. You can't expect someone else will do it. So unless we recognize our responsibilities, I have responsibility, for example, to educate. And then it doesn't stop there. As our teachers say, people think that religion is only for people that dress like us. Religion is for mankind. It teaches you how to live your life. So therefore, Islam, Christianity, they all have the belief that it's the perfect religion. That when it comes to even small matters like how to eat cucumbers, we have riwayat, we have narrations telling you how to eat cucumbers, brothers and sisters. So therefore, when it comes to bringing up your children, when it comes to certain matters, when it comes to mixed events, Islam has the answer for that. It's just that knowing your responsibility and then educating yourself. And not to go on, but we are living in a time where educating oneself is so easy now. You have alim online. You can discuss your matters online. If we don't know something, we message our own teachers and say, what's the answer to this? We do it ourselves. So I think we should make use of the technology and the speed at which technology is moving to our benefit, so we can educate ourselves and come out of this bubble of ignorance.
There are a lot of ways, I suppose. I think we mentioned a couple of them when we were talking earlier. I think I tend to sort of think community-wise whenever I do this. Even when I'm doing theology, I always think, well, how does that work where I live? And so I come back to that. And so the importance of when issues is the ways in which people can work together. So I think, in local schools and communities and in the city as a whole, to get these things on the agenda, it's working together with people of similar concerns. And but the concern probably is how to do that in a sort of discourse that can be heard. We everywhere we look now, we see that everybody shouts at each other, nobody listens, and so how we can, the sorts of issues which are threatening to family life in the schools and in society, how we respond, not as angry or bigoted as we tend to be branded, but with respect and from our faith. Other ways of discourse, social media. One of the things that you often hear, I'm sure you've often heard, is when terrible things happen, is so where are the moderate Muslims' voices? And I hear that, and I say, have you looked for them? Usually, so one of the things I do in social media, our Twitter account, I retweet things from Muslim groups that I followed, so that Christians can see there are voices that are expressing these similar sorts of questions. Just as I try to put up Christian responses to responses for the sake of others. So there are ways in which we can influence in the situations of our day in positive ways, but it does begin with at the local level to start with, I think. That's what I always tell people, but we do have counselors to talk to, and we do have MPs to write to, and so forth. And if it's done with a common voice, it carries more weight than just an individual.
Final question from the brothers, Brother Sean. They'll bring it.
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for very nice speeches. It is good that this kind of event bring the different communities, Muslims and Christians together, and it gives them a better understanding between themselves, and it reduces the biasness and prejudices we have for centuries. Like when we came to this country, those days, back in 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of indigenous people used to be kind of practicing Christians. A lot of people used to go to churches. And when we came here, we found the common thing between the local people and as immigrants here is their adherence to religion, like Jesus Christ. So we find Jesus Christ in our book as well. Maryam, Holy Mary, we find in our book, and people going to churches. And we found love and peace. And those days there was a love, and although we were different, and we kept our differences, but there was kind of social understanding between people, and we felt loved here. And the crimes were very low those days because majority of people. So later on, the secular forces coming and getting rid of the religious part of religion, it has increased. I mean, what we got now is high crimes, no love, no peace, no security, no hope, no stability. It's just I'm first and I'm the last. And greed and the bad side of human nature is on the surface. That's a comment. Now the question is, now as we heard from different scholars, Muslim and Christians, and obviously there is no unanimous belief between Muslims as well. There are different groups, and basically we all agree on one thing, whether we are Jews, Christian, Muslim, all we believe in God, and everybody wants peace, love, and as Holy Father said, peace, love, and security. Forgiveness, yeah. Everybody likes this is good characteristic of, and everybody wants this. To achieve this back again, is it not good idea that we should keep to main themes, whether it's Old Testament or Bible or Quran, but the interpretation, where it comes interpretation, we all differ, and there's difference between Jews, Muslim, Christians, and between Muslim and Muslims as well. So is it not good idea that the interpretation should be left till later or left to scholars, so to reduce the misunderstanding between each other?
I've got the mic. Yes, it's not that our interpretations don't matter, or that another's doesn't matter, but it is how do we live together even when we differ. And this is perhaps the challenge. I think it's a challenge that we work, one of the reasons why we established this center that I'm a part of, is that we can go so far as say we have so much in common, and that's good. But when we get to the points where we do differ, can we still shake hands? Can we still live in our communities together? And that is indeed, I think, what we have to be dealing with. So you start with what has been said many times. You start with a person, you start with your neighbor. And the command, there are only two commands really that Jesus said. One is to love the Lord, to God, and that as the Lord is one, and the other is your neighbor as yourself. And I'm so glad to hear that story about Christians who expressed that sort of love, because I know a lot of people didn't experience that sort of love from their neighbors when they arrived in this country. And it's something I talk to churches a lot about. And to my American colleagues, co-religionists, when they're, I'm constantly telling them, love your neighbor.
Yes.
And I say, love your Muslim neighbor. And so that's where we start with that. And then yes, later on we can talk about the differences, and where the differences matter, to still say that we can live together.
I think we could learn a lot from each other. Okay, I came to Islam by studying other religions and not refuting any of them. I see our living shoulder to shoulder with Buddhists, for example, has brought the idea of mindfulness in our understanding or our look at religion. Not that we didn't have mindfulness before, right? But we were able to single it out and pay a specific attention to it and to be able to perfect it. And I think that if a Muslim is open-minded enough, the kind of advice that Buddhist lamas and saints and so on would give us in terms of meditation, it could be something that we can take and we could use it in our religion. We're cross-pollinating. We're not importing theology. We're importing practice, and even in theology itself as well. A lot of Muslims, the average Muslim is a kind of an armchair theologian, okay? Islam has a very rationalistic aspect to it. And a lot of Muslims are confused about this rationalism as a proof for the truth of their religion, for example. And so you present Islam as a rationalistic structure, and you feel surprised that a person would not accept it, for example. You see? And we look at the Christians, for example. The Christian situation would be a different one. They would be stressing on love. So you'd find, like, for example, people doing propagation in Africa. They'll be preaching and they would be talking about this rationalist stuff, and a Christian would be out there digging a well. We can learn from them, and they can learn from us. My daughter, for example, she's in university. She prays 5 times a day. She's in university, she's in a meeting, or she's in a gathering with some of her friends, who are Muslims and non-Muslim. Time comes to prayer. She says, I'm going to pray, guys. I'll be right back. Christian girl jumps up. I'm coming with you. She wouldn't have jumped up to come with her if she was alone. But the Muslim has empowered her to be able to do that. We could learn a lot from each other. The things that divide us, what divides us really? What divides us, I think, are really theological issues. Not issues of practice, not issues of prayer, not issues of kindness, not issues of self-sacrifice, not issues of being a leader, a moral leader in your society. There's a lot between us that we could mobilize and we could unite around, especially with respect to the fact that we all face the same challenges and dangers in this society. We all face them. And I am sure that Christians can confront some of these challenges and difficulties in a unique and special way that makes them successful in this. And I'm sure that we can do the same thing in other areas, and we can exchange notes about this. You see, there's not a heck of a lot that divide us. I tell you the truth. I come from a Christian family, Okay, I only have 3 other brothers who are Muslims. All right? And the kind of language that we speak with each other, the kind of support we give to each other. I call my mom sometimes, I tell my mom, pray for me, man. You know what I mean? I might be confronting some kind of issue. Pray for me. My mom is a Christian. But I know the prayer of a mother is heard. You know, it's a special prayer that God answers. You see, and whether your mom is a Christian or a Jew or a, I was going to say atheist, but that don't work. Or a Muslim, you know, Allah would hear that prayer coming from the heart of that mother. One final thing I'd like to say is, I have seen a lot of interfaith gatherings that have been elitist. Okay, what I mean by elitist is this. You have on top of the panel a couple of experts, but the audience is always some kind of homogeneous mass of maybe Muslims only or Christians only. I think we should take interfaith the next level. Right? I think we should take an interfaith, for example, where our youth go to a Christian church, and they share with each other, and their youth come to our mosque and share with us. And we have a camp together, and we have a mixed team on this side and a mixed team on that side, and we're going to kick your behind in the football competition that's coming along when I pass my ball to Peter, and Peter passes his ball to Abdullah. You know what I mean? I want to see us take it to that level, on a community level. And on that level, I don't think anybody could be able to break that, and I think we have a strong basis for increasing our influence in society. Yes. Liverpool.
Yeah. So I think it's as has been mentioned, this and I've been feeling it as well, that there's so much that could be done, and obviously this is just an introduction. And it's absolutely right that we don't have, or we've not facilitated events where we can have the interfaith, or should I really call it community cohesion in a better way, where whether it's through the medium of sports or whether it be through something. I mean, I know we have the Hedri Cup, which is a football tournament, and I always ask for, because people from any faith to come in, it's always, and almost there's something, that barrier, but perhaps now is more time than ever to be seeking places where we can unite. And yes, the discussion so far has been, yes, there are differences and there are theological differences, but there's also a lot of commonalities in what was been said today about the purifying of the soul, for example, which was mentioned by Father Falak, where we have the concept of nafs and the wama nafsa wama zakaha, as in the person, as the Quran says, who purifies the soul. And in taking to that, the concept of a savior, we're all looking for, whether it be Jesus, peace be upon him, or Imam Mahdi, that there is an essential await. And is that awaiting a passive await, or is that an active await? So whether you're awaiting for Jesus or whether you're waiting for Imam Mahdi, what are we doing presently to build that foundation so that when the leadership does come, that the platform is ready? And actually, as Muslims, as Christians, as followers of an Abrahamic faith, that we're united, because you know what's going to happen at the end of the day, we are going to be united in a sense. At least for me, it's a united front. So when this beautiful world does come into play, whatever that does look like, what are our responsibilities today? And I think it's so beautiful, the events, say, at Manchester Cathedral, or the efforts of Dr. Dwight, and the efforts of the ulama here in writing books in seminaries and doing these circles where we're actually doing an active approach, rather than okay, we've done this interfaith, and then we're going to flee. No, it's more of a understanding on how we can build on that. I know we did the iftar here as well. We invited the Christians, the local Cheadle church, to come in, and a lot of people had never attended a center before, and they're literally down the road, and it's really events like this that I hope we can do. And I'm sure there's a lot more to say. There was a lot more questions that come forward, so it just signifies the need for us to be doing more events. Furthermore, I would like to thank the panel for coming, and I know it's been slightly late, prolonged, but I think this is actually a good attendance for 10:45, because usually there's like maybe 4 or 5 people left. So I think the fact that there's still people here means that people are interested, and it is a success. So just before we end, a quick mention on what is happening. So there's also a program here next weekend, which is Fatimia, which is with former chair, now trustee, Dr. Ehsan Rangiha, and we have reciters Sirat Abbas and Sayyid Ali Al-Hakim. We also have, before that, Sister Nosheen Zahra. So she's doing children's interactive workshop on Sayyida Zahra for 5 to 7 p.m. It was noted that, especially in Muharram time, that there wasn't any activity which was catering for the children in the majalis, and it was very well received in Muharram. So we've continued that. So you can come in at 5, and then the lecture starts at 7. So you can bring your children for an interactive workshop, inshallah. Also, starting from 7th February, this is the other thing I really like. We have a Duai Kumail, a Thursday at East West Didsbury Church, which actually I got Father Falak's contact through. So we actually work with the church. We rent the hall where we have our Duai Kumail program. This is East Didsbury. It's off where Kids Aloud is on Princess Road. We will be having from 7th February a mental health focus group. Both brothers and sisters are invited, and people who attend all 4 workshops can bag a £20 Amazon voucher. Is up for grabs. There's also an event on 23rd February, which is a first of its kind. It's a ladies only convention, which is 23rd February. We have really great workshops from Sister Rebecca Masterton. There's also poetry, there's raffle, there's a lot. So it's certainly going to be a busy February, let's just say. I'd like to end by thanking everyone to attend and thanking our speakers, and Jazakumullah khair. Salawat.
Take care, my friend. God bless you.
Just a quick photo if you don't mind.
Watch this. Hello. This works, Muslim. Muslim. Hello. One sec. No, but we need to see how far it works. Does it work? It's not very sensitive though, look. Hello. Hello.
How you test it is you say something really bad. Hello?
Yeah, it works. Is this feedback? Yeah, that's good though. Let's try and get a. Let's try and get a.
Hola, amigo.
Sound like a proper one.
What I said?
¿Cómo estás?